Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Top Story podcast, where we delve into the just concluded 19th G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro. I'm Xizhi. The summit concluded with a leaders' declaration in which they reaffirmed commitment to building a fair world and a sustainable planet, prioritizing the fight against inequality. Joe Richards has more.
On the second day of the G20 summit in Rio, the focus was on climate change. In the third and final session, Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, the Brazil president, urged countries to accelerate their work to reduce emissions. The current goal of reducing emissions by 2050, well, Lula said that needed to be pushed forward by at least 10 years. So more ambition from Brazil's president, who as host of this G20 oversaw countries uniting and agreeing a joint statement that was released on Monday evening, a number of agreements and cooperation on a series of issues, from reducing poverty and hunger to reforming the United Nations Security Council. So a lot of goodwill, a consensus reached. The questions after the G20 here in Rio, nonetheless, how to implement those changes. Observers saying there were a few details in the final statement, and also, of course, there are the shifting geopolitics. With the imminent arrival of Donald Trump as the US president, the question is how the G20 will be able to implement the agreements reached here in Brazil.
That was Joe Richards reporting. One of the highlights of this year's summit is the launch of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. In his speech at the meeting, Chinese President Xi Jinping said China's achievements in poverty alleviation have given other developing countries the confidence to strive for the same goal. He stressed that China will always be a member of the Global South and a reliable and long-term partner of developing countries. Wu Lei spoke with some senior government officials for their views on China's poverty alleviation experiences.
Hundreds of these favelas or slums can be seen in most Brazilian cities. Many people still live in poor houses and suffer from hunger. To end extreme poverty is a pressing challenge for many countries. During G20 leaders meeting, a global alliance is expected to be launched, calling for more cooperation and action. A group of government officials, representatives from multilateral organizations, banks, and institutions gathered for the G20 social summit, discussing the measures and global efforts to fight hunger and poverty.
This alliance will support the improvement of living conditions, not only to fight hunger, but also to increase the number of people who escape poverty through employment, entrepreneurship, social and economic inclusion. The experience that China has is very important for the results of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty.
Data from the meeting shows extreme poverty is falling far too slowly to achieve the 2030 ambition. Over 600 million people are estimated to still be living below the extreme poverty threshold in 2030. That's why many countries are looking forward to the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, which is expected to officially be launched during the G20 meeting.
In Peru, we still face big challenges. Our gap regarding extreme poverty and food insecurity is very significant. With the support of other countries and with their experience and exposure, we want to truly be able to advance the fulfillment of these goals.
Many Global South countries hope to enhance cooperation with China on poverty alleviation.
And I'm quite sure that Nigeria and China and together in Global South, and we are working together also. So the essence of bringing the government together, or government representative or head of government together, is to share knowledge sharing, knowledge transfer.
Brazilian officials say to achieve the vision, more governments, finance, and knowledge organization partners are welcome to join in the efforts, as they believe ending global poverty and hunger is a long-term project.
That was Wu Lei speaking with the government officials on China's poverty alleviation. At the Rio summit, Chinese President Xi Jinping also announced 8 action plans in support of the global development, which include expanding cooperation with African countries. China and Africa have been boosting collaboration within the G20 to tackle global challenges. Director Liu Baochen of the Center for International Business Ethics at the University of International Business and Economics says China and other emerging economies are pushing for a more inclusive approach to issues like climate change, health, and financial stability.
By the creation of the G20, the basic understanding of the G7 of those rich countries cannot really deal with global issues like environmental protection and also health issues and also the possible financial contingent and all of this. So that's why these big emerging economies come up into place, particularly the BRIC and the African Union. This way, there's going to be a balanced approach, but of course, there's going to be a lot of controversy, a lot of debate, but the basic consensus is there that developing countries need to go for industrialization and also urbanization in which people can really feel the tangible benefit. China always identifies itself as the strong advocate of the interest of the developing countries. And China is also there to be very much committed to promote the development within the global south through the Belt and Road program. And also China is very much a believer that the real benefit of those people, improvement in their life, increase in education, and betterment in the healthcare system. So these are more important than what is hanging in the air as described, democracy, which depends on very different understanding and different implementation. And then China also wanted to set up an example by first to boost the infrastructure development and then to cater to African capacity building by introducing so many African governmental leaders and also students, young scholars, to come to China to build dialogue and receive training. And then China is also committed to offer more of the opportunities for trade and development. In addition to the energy and raw materials, China is also there to provide more of the practical technologies that cater to the local market. For example, the manufacturing skills, basic management skills as how to jumpstart a small company, and all the way to introduce the now more environmentally gadgets like solar panels and e-cars and e-batteries, not to mention those smartphones, etc. So this is more of a holistic approach, and based on which China further opens its market because we have eliminated almost all the tariff towards those least developed countries, particularly from Africa, and then how we can really boost more of the streamlining in the customs clearance, in the quality and quantity, the inspection. So these are the issues that China has been playing out, particularly with the existence of the digital technologies that are widely available.
Liu Baocheng stresses the significance of building a more trustworthy partnership between developed countries and emerging economies to support the UN-led reform, ensuring a more equitable global governance framework. Apart from attending the G20 summit, the Chinese president's trip to Brazil also includes a state visit to the South American country, as this year marks the 50th anniversary of their diplomatic relations. President Xi will hold talks with Brazil's Lula Inácio Lula da Silva. This is the fifth time that Xi Jinping has visited Brazil. Chen Ziyuan reports.
President Xi's agenda in Brasilia includes a welcoming ceremony and a welcoming banquet. Both leaders will witness the signing and exchange of cooperation documents and meet with the press. Brazil is China's 9th largest trading partner, and China is Brazil's biggest trading partner. According to data from China's customs, bilateral trade volume has reached more than $181 billion. A report by the Brazil-China Business Council showed a major increase in Brazil's import from China, from vehicles and components, with the import volume of cars reaching more than $760 million. The two countries have also cooperated in space and information technology. China and Brazil's co-developed Earth Resources Satellite project has been a leading example of South-South cooperation. 5 satellites have been successfully launched so far. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said China hopes the visit will open the next chapter in the golden friendship of the two countries.
That was Chen Ziyuan on the Chinese president's state visit to Brazil. As China and Brazil work together to address global challenges, senior columnist Nelson de Sá with Brazil's largest newspaper believes their collaboration is crucial to shaping a more equitable and a sustainable future. He shared insights on how the China-Brazil partnership is expanding beyond trade, highlighting key areas of cooperation, including climate action. Guo Yan has details.
I've been obsessed with China for some years by now.
I met Nelson Dessa, an Asia correspondent for Folha de Sao Paulo, Brazil's largest newspaper, at a park in downtown Beijing to discuss the growing relationship between China and Brazil.
The basic stories about China that interest Brazilian readers, it's about trade.
Nelson, who has covered China extensively, explained why trade continues to dominate the news agenda in Brazil.
Like from 15 years up to now, China has been Brazil's largest trade partner. Brazil sells lots of agricultural commodities to China. I guess partly because of the trade and economic relations, but also because China has become so important in the global arena.
Chinese customs data shows that trade between China and Brazil exceeded $180 billion as of 2023, marking a 6% increase from the previous year. This trade volume has surpassed $100 billion for 6 consecutive years, with China remaining Brazil's top trading partner, while Brazil stands as China's largest trading partner in Latin America. Beyond trade, Nelson highlighted how the two countries have been working together to combat climate change. With this year's G20 summit focusing on building a just world and a sustainable planet, he sees Brazil and China as key players in addressing global environmental challenges.
I guess climate change, both Brazil and China have very important roles as leaders and examples, because Brazil now, at least in this government, is trying to, fix its problems in the Amazon and the tropical forest. And also China has been, on the other side of the coin, has been working on like electric cars and other ways of fighting climate change.
Data from Brazilian government agencies show that sales of Chinese electric vehicles in Brazil surged 8-fold in the first 4 months of 2024, reaching 48,000 units. This growing presence reflects China's expanding influence in Brazil's clean energy market. Nelson also pointed out a major development.
Last year, Lula and Xi Jinping summit, one of the results of it was that BYD decided to build a factory in Brazil. We are importing lots of electric cars, but producing these cars in Brazil will have, I guess, an important step towards that. But they're also working on solar panels being produced in Brazil and this kind of thing.
Looking ahead, the senior journalist anticipated more important developments in bilateral ties, particularly during Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to Brazil.
It's expected that this Xi Jinping state visit to Brasilia just after the G20. He will go from Rio de Janeiro to Brasilia, the capital. That's the important one. That's going to be huge. There will be lots of agreements on investment and infrastructure, and that would be important.
China and Brazil's relationship is no longer confined to trade alone. With the growing collaboration in climate action, green technology, and infrastructure, the two countries are setting the stage for an even stronger and more multifaceted partnership in the years to come.
That was Guo Yan sharing her conversation with Brazilian journalist Nelson Dessa. And that's it for this special edition of the Top Story podcast on the just concluded G20 summit in Brazil. I'm Qi Zhi. Thank you for listening.